Ay. Ay, putang ina, never mind. The trannies going to talk about Kurt Cobain. Po talaga? This is a protest song for Kurt to sing. I was 12 years old when Kurt Cobain died. I had already started taking an interest in his band. Smells Like Teen Spirit was still fucking everywhere in the culture, and I was kind of taken at this little bit of danger in my otherwise squeaky clean, people-pleasing, good kid existence. I was 12 years old watching MTV on the little television my mom had set up in the kitchen to watch cooking shows on. I was 12 and it was Sunday, and I stood in my kitchen listening to Courtney Love read her dead husband's suicide note to about 7,000 kids who had gathered in Seattle to light candles and cry. Peace, love, empathy, empathy, I remember Love scoffing, her voice cracking and breaking apart. I bought a copy of Nevermind on October 14th, later that year, after I had turned 13, and I have the exact date because, as my Lolo would do, I saved the receipt. Tucked it carefully underneath the CD tray. It was from the Sam Goody in North Point Mall in Alpharetta, Georgia. It was $13.72. My parents did not like Nirvana, and especially did not appreciate me taking such an interest in a band after the singer killed himself, a singer who had been a pretty well-publicized drug addict. And here I should like for you all to appreciate the risk that I am taking in outing myself as a poser, a kid who did not get into Nirvana until after Kurt's suicide. Some things must begin with death. In the months before I was able to get my hands on a copy of the album, I played Weird Al's Smells Like Nirvana over and over, trying hard as I could to ignore the words being sung, the barnyard sounds that were dubbed in. The riff was still there, its power undiluted by parody. Now, it is fairly mimetic in extremely online transgender spaces to speculate that Kurt Cobain was potentially trans and that estrogen may have prevented her death. In the casual and the cultivated areas of queer social media and Discord servers, that has been satisfying to dwell on. Through that is a sort of intra-community parable. We get to claim an ally as one of our own, get to imagine saving one of us. In pulling Kurt out of history and holding them to our chests, we get to imagine having a trans elder where we have so few. Hope born of a harmless cultural theft. For us, she's still here, occasionally posting outfit selfies that she still takes on an analog camera in a mirror, occasionally releasing weirdo noise records like a good trans girl is practically bound by contract to do. Saving her life means we may be able to save our own. But the truth is that Kurt was a severely depressed person. She was an incredible songwriter, and she was an outspoken ally to the queer community, going out of her way to make sure that she gave an interview to The Advocate magazine when she posed in a floral dress on the cover of The Face and told them she was not gay but wished she was. I felt that shit. I may not have been able to articulate it then, but whatever kind of queer Kurt was felt very similar to the kind of queer I could not yet see I was. In high school, still nominally a boy then, my otherness as a shrimpy brown kid, as a young person in the thresher of 1990s American suburbia, as an unknowing queer, was a series of unwelcome intrusions. Once, I was sitting among friends waiting for play rehearsal to start. Of course, I was in theater. My dad, who had just dropped me off, ran inside to use the restroom, and he stopped by and he said, "Hello. My mother is Filipina. an emigre from Caloocan. My father is a tall, sturdy man from Detroit of French and Scottish extraction with a wide, friendly face and a handlebar mustache, always impeccably waxed into handsome little hooks. He's a white guy, is what I'm trying to say. Once he was out of the room, my friends turned to me and asked, a little too casually for my liking, if I was adopted. Apparently, brown skin must be accompanied by the woman who gave it to me. My existence requires explanation, an illustration to keep me legible. Filipinos are much more visible now than they were then. We have Lea Salonga, we have Bruno Mars, we have Olivia Rodrigo preparing lumpia for Vogue magazine. White people, ever following the lead of black folks who have known us and loved us for ages, have at last looked slightly to the right of Japan. Lucky us. In 1998, the deepest that most white folks' knowledge of the Asian diaspora went was Vietnam. I am not Vietnamese, nor Chinese, Lao, Tibetan, or Korean, but the casual racism stretching back to 1850s California with a healthy boost during World War II and again during the Vietnam War absolutely shaped my childhood, how I was seen, how I was not, how I saw myself, and how I did not. Nobody knew what the Philippines were, never heard of it, and so I was Chinese boy, or chink, or gook, or slope, or slant, or zipperhead, or Charlie, or any of the other number of slurs brought back by American GIs. And these were my friends saying this. Truly the way that racism against Asian people was just completely accepted as A-OK back in the 90s was crazy work. Growing up, not realizing I was a girl, my social world looked very strange to any outside observer. I was forever the one long-haired boy hanging out with a bunch of young women. I wonder if being Asian made me seem non-threatening to these girls' parents, who seemed to have zero problem with me spending time with their daughters, hanging out in their bedrooms. Just one of the girls. Was it my skin? Or were they able to see something in me I yet could not? It has taken me time to parse out how to accept being seen as friendly, because I spent so many years being seen as non-threatening. I do not want to be a threat, but there is a negation in being perceived as meek. Chinese immigrants in Gold Rush era California were seen as at once placid, sexless, unthreatening, meek, while at the same time as animals who would steal and rape white women and overrun good white communities. Being a transsexual now, I have seen this playbook before. Pervasive as it may be, hatred is rarely original. The Chinese Exclusion Act, the Compton's cafeteria riot. We are always everything and nothing to those who want us gone. Generational racial hatred eventually distills down into utter ignorance. So, I am brown, and my father is white. Certainly that completely obscures my origins. Certainly I must be adopted. Certainly my brownness must be me entirely. In America, race is everything, and it is nothing. In his 1993 interview with The Advocate, asked if he ever thought he might be gay, Cobain responded, throughout my life, I've always been, throughout my life, I've always been like really close with girls and made friends with girls. And I've always been a really sickly feminine person anyhow. I mean, I'm definitely gay in spirit, and I probably could be bisexual. Probably bisexual is absolutely something that I thought of myself as my sexuality started asking me questions I could not answer. I guess I'm probably bi became something of a terminating thought, a non-answer, stuffing an entire line of inquiry down into the corners of my subconscious, even though I really had no interest in being romantic with men. It was a stand-in for further exploration because I did not yet have the language of queer My budding sense of self had to pilfer from an adjacent margin where a boy who likes girls, but maybe not the same way that other boys like girls, could fit. Not until much later would I understand that I could be a girl and a faggot and a freak. My mother was a teenager when she emigrated to the States in the early 70s, transported from the urban clutter north of Manila to the rusted industrial grandeur of Detroit and America, finding its cynicism. The attitude then was, we are Americans now. And so when I came along a decade later, along with my cousins and my siblings, we were not taught to speak Tagalog. I have a lot of empathy for my mom in this decision. For starters, we were in Macomb County, Michigan. Our Filipino community was, well, we were kind of it, really. To raise us with two tongues would have given us accents which would have cemented outsider status, totally counter to the goal of assimilation. On top of that, my mother, for all of her wonderful qualities, is not a teacher, and I am a terrible student. Language lessons would have ended in tears, and so in its stead, my mom, my titas, my lola, used Tagalog to gossip about us kids while we were in the room. Of course, no amount of integrating into white-centric America dulled our melanin or aired out the fragrance of garlic and vinegar in our kitchens. Being Filipino was always going to be a part of who we are, but with little grounding in any trace of culture. We were brown children raised in white neighborhoods, Filipino Americans raised with Tagalog in our ears, English in our mouths, and little sense of history or context to help us sort out why we felt or were treated differently from the other kids. In a way, we were adopted, fostered by a culture that would politely invite us in to sit at its tables, hang out with its daughters, see us as something, but nothing. And so we built from the debris we found washed ashore alongside us, mimicked our lolo's wordplay, our lola's cheerful hum and sunny countenance. We clung to the few phrases we picked up here and there. Even now, in middle age, I am learning bit by bit about trans women's prominence in Filipino history, the babaylan, and the casual relationship that pre-colonial Pinay had with gender, and I am absorbing that into my personality. Alienation casts a wide net. It had me sit at my stereo, substituting Weird Al for Nirvana. It's how I landed at probably bisexual, and it can make self-discovery feel like theft. An absence of culture makes dilettantes of us all. This is a white nation which threw Japanese citizens into internment camps, murdered Filipino farm workers in 1920s California, committed genocide against its native peoples, sold black bodies into chattel slavery, sat by and let a generation of gay people die of AIDS, burned down Tulsa, drowned Oscarville into Lake Lanier, leveled a forest so that Israeli military could train our police for war against us. And this is also a white nation which loves our seasoned food and loves our foreign and exotic practices and our brightly colored clothing and our dances and our music and our slang and our cool. America loves RuPaul's Drag Race and does not care about the dozens of dead trans people this year has given us. In all of our flavors of brown and queer and marginal, it is whiteness which has fooled us into believing we have no self, when it is whiteness which is the void, the absence of past and personhood. Whiteness being the erasure of English and Spanish and Italian and the exclusion of Scottish and French and German and Greek in favor of unified power. Whiteness offers inclusion without community. It is the hungry nothing which must absorb that on which it feeds, and the further that I have wrenched myself away from it, the closer I have gotten to who I really am. I am a Filipino transsexual Southern girl, and in that lattice of identity, I have found my people. birth made me a half-white American boy, hatred and fear and peace and love and empathy made me find the rest myself. In Smells Like Teen Spirit, Kurt sings, "Our little group has always been." But in the original handwritten lyrics to that song, she uses the word tribe. And the implication there really appeals to me. Tribe, a family found and banded together, which has always been and always will, until the end. Thank you.